So, whenever I talk about the past, there's one thing I always keep in mind. It may be cool to travel back in time to visit some of these historical eras, but it would absolutely suck to have to live in the past. Possibly the area where this is most glaringly true is with medicine. Medical care may have advanced a lot by the year 1919, but there was still a lot to work on, to say the least. Of course, this is all pretty obvious. After all, organ transplants wouldn't be a thing done successfully until a kidney transplant in 1954, several vaccines hadn't been invented yet, including the vaccines for measles and polio, and we didn't even realize that diseases like AIDS even existed. Oh, and we were also going through a massive pandemic, known as the Spanish flu. The Spanish flu was an outbreak of the H1N1 virus that happened apparently on Earth, which infected 500 million people and killed anywhere between 50 and 100 million, about 3 to 5% of the world's population at the time. Interestingly though, the flu didn't originate in Spain, and it only killed around 260,000 Spaniards. The only reason it was dubbed the Spanish flu was because the Spanish press was more free to report on these kinds of stories as opposed to the press in other countries of Europe, as over there was a war going on, which Spain was neutral in. World War I without the Nazis actually saw a huge advancement in medical technology that some would argue is unparalleled by any other 4-year period in history. I mean, it makes sense. Medical technology was suddenly improving during a time when there was suddenly a lot of disease and injury and death. Kind of like how you probably only truly take care of your body when you're sick or injured.
Oh, be honest, you probably do this too.
However, it still wasn't exactly all that luxurious during the war, especially in places like the Eastern Front, which kept moving around every day, meaning actually setting up semi-permanent infirmaries was nearly impossible. Due to this, as well as the infamously squalid conditions on the battlefield, disease started to rival the combat itself in terms of troop death rates. Despite all this, there was still some advancements that came around because of the war, like blood transfusions. Today, blood transfusion is a common and relatively safe procedure performed all the time in hospitals, and people donate their own blood for this purpose all the time. You've probably even donated some blood for this purpose, making you a way better person than I am. However, the practice had kind of been around since as far back as the 1660s, just not really all that commonly used, especially with the fact that it wasn't fully discovered and taken seriously that humans have different types of blood until 1901. The first successful blood transfusion was performed in 1907. However, the blood had to be donated from the donor to the donee directly, because blood left on its own generally tends to coagulate, which is kind of a problem in an unpredictable war zone. It was then discovered that you could just put in some anticoagulant into the mix and refrigerate it, and it will be ready to go by the time it reaches the battlefield. Just remember to put it in the microwave for a bit first. The first civilian blood bank would later be established in Chicago in 1937 by a certain Bernard Fantis, who would use a 2% solution of sodium citrate to preserve refrigerated blood for up to 10 days. Morphine use was also pioneered throughout the war. In fact, as you may or may not have heard from the one episode of Adam Ruins Everything, our over-the-counter drugs of choice were a bit different back then. Heroin was a common over-the-counter drug during these times, developed as a supposedly non-addictive replacement for morphine as a painkiller and cough medication. However, it turned out that it actually kind of was addictive, and in 1924, the US Congress reclassified it as a Schedule I substance, banning its production and sale in or import to the United States. So much for that. The war also saw some more natural remedies. Now, not exactly the natural herbal remedies that your weird aunt established a business on trying to convince everyone not to trust Big Pharma and come back to nature. No, none of that stuff. Just stuff like peat moss, which grew throughout Britain, absorbs fluids, is lightweight, and has antiseptic properties, making it an ideal way to take care of battle injuries. Oh, and they also use maggots. Yep, maggots. I mean, they only eat dead tissue and excrete urea, which is also an antiseptic. Maggots were actually used to treat potentially infected wounds until antibiotics like penicillin were invented and put into wider use, phasing out the use of maggots to treat wounds. Unless you're someone who's allergic to penicillin, sorry mom. However, to prevent against bacterial and viral infections in the first place, the best way to do so is with a vaccine. Vaccines did exist 100 years ago, well before that in fact, but the real advancements came in the 1920s, with doctors releasing vaccines for diphtheria, whooping cough, tuberculosis, and tetanus, with the vaccines for yellow fever and typhus coming in the 30s and the first flu shots in 1945.
On top of that, the first use of insulin to treat diabetes happened in 1922, and it was a game changer. But another sugar-lowering drug called metformin started getting picked up a few decades later. Metformin is a super powerful drug used alongside insulin, but I'd argue that metformin made an underrated impact in how we treat diabetes today. I actually made a video about it in tangent with this video, so head over to my channel to go find out more.
Okay, thank you Patrick from the channel Corporis. So yeah, the war we had just had may have contributed a lot to medicine and healthcare, but we still had a long way to go. In fact, the life expectancy in 1919 in the US was 53.5 years for men and 56 years for women, whereas now it's 79.3 for both sexes, which actually places the US at 31st place. First place actually goes to Japan at 83.7, and this is only projected to grow further in the future. So perhaps this will go to show that while the past might be an interesting place to visit, you probably wouldn't want to live there. Maybe get a supersized postcard from the Renaissance or something like that, I don't know. Thank you for watching. Please be sure to give this video a like if you liked it, and be sure to shout like if you want someone to punch you in the face. Okay, I didn't, okay. Also be sure to check out Patrick's video on his channel Corporis, and be sure to subscribe to KhAnubis to learn something new every Sunday. And also check out the Discord server and follow me on the social media things and all that. Okay, bye!